I don't know. I feel like this episode should be short, but at the same time, I don't think it will be. Mostly because even though the central theme does sort of revolve around shit in one way or another, there's still quite a couple of gems to pick up and some pieces of information that I feel just need to be said. And I feel like that one, it's not something that'll take a very short time to do. But you know what? We'll just see what comes along. But all in all, before I can do any of that, I want to start by speaking on something that was much shorter than the length of this podcast. Now, there is a space radio signal that took, get this, 8 billion years to reach Earth, and the length of that radio signal was so tiny, I'm actually wondering why this is something that was really worth talking about. But all in all, I am going to read the context for you. So the story goes, and I quote, "A radio signal of incredible power that originated 8 billion years ago in a distant galaxy has reached Earth. The signal was detected by a radio telescope in Australia and it lasted for less than 1,000th of a second. A team of astronomers announced on Thursday that this is the most powerful fast radio burst, or FRB, to date. Even more intriguing, this fast radio burst originated from a distance of 8 billion light years away, during a time when the universe was less than half its current age." End quote. Now, I'm still trying to wrap my head around why this is such a big deal, and also how it is they were able to measure out how long it took for the radio signal to come. Like, I don't think these things usually leave a trail, so my question is, how the hell is it that you pick up on something that lasted for 1,000th of a second? And I don't think many people know how 1,000th of a second is. Like, that shit is fast. Even though I was to do, that's way longer than the 1,000th of a second. Because, and I'm hoping I'm not too wrong about this, but when a human being blinks, that's usually like a 50th of a second? Which, when you kind of think about it, that's like 50 milliseconds. Now, getting to 1,000 of those milliseconds, like, that's 20 times faster than that. Like 20 times faster than you blinking is what these guys managed to pick up. And they're making such a big deal about it and claiming that it came from 8 billion years ago. Like, how exactly can you measure how long it took? Because it's not like space is just empty. And even though it is, like, sound doesn't usually travel in a vacuum. And, this is probably me just nerding out with like class 7 science, but sound doesn't operate in a vacuum, and also, like, there's so many different things for sound to bounce off of in space. If you were to remove the whole vacuum side of things, that at a distance that was traveled over 8 billion years, for all we know, it could be the Transformers that are busy sending out a signal to make sure there's an Earth to come and conquer. For all we know, it could be someone from the multiverse trying to communicate with us. Either way, I feel like this is something that I probably shouldn't even have blown out of proportion. It's just that when you think about it, there are scientists that wait tens of years just waiting for a signal like this one, which lasts for even 1,000th of a second, and they love it so much because there's so much they can learn from it. And yet me sending a text to a babe 6 days later is suddenly such a big issue, and they're always overthinking shit. I don't know. I've never really understood that bit, but all in all, there is a podcast on relationships that I need to start, and for me to do that, I think we need to change over a little bit. So,
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breaktime Podcast, the podcast where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit that, I should be adding over time. The man on the mic is a man who believes that if you believe in astrology, then you should be willing to wait forever to get a text back. Because if smart people, aka scientists, can do it, so can you. He's a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. I do not think that I have done an episode where I felt like everything is involving shit up until this one. Now, granted, I don't think I do episodes with the express intention of spewing a bunch of shit, at least without some sort of advice. So in this particular case, it's pretty much the same thing. Yes, just the same way there's trash, I intend on giving you some treasure within it. Just the same way it might sound like I'm speaking from rags, there's a bunch of riches that you might get. And just because you think that there's a bunch of shit that's coming in this episode, I may leave, I don't know, sweet nothings, I guess. Either way, I intend on giving you something particularly good, and if you do like it, if you don't like it, if there's something that you would like us to speak on the podcast about, then the place to hit me up at on Facebook is at The Break Time Podcast, on IG it is at The Break Time _podcast, and on Twitter you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at BagakaTheD, and I would be more than happy to take what it is that you send me and turn it into something that is not just garbage but gold. Now, I do have a couple of things that I do want to talk about on this episode, mostly regarding Gen Zs, but before I can get into any of that, I want to play a certain clip and, discuss something that I find to be particularly interesting. Mostly because I feel like we are getting to a point where being a straight man is bothering some people a little too much. But all in all, let me just play the clip for you guys and I can get into it. So, without further ado...
Every heterosexual man should experience anal penetration, full stop, just to understand the vulnerability of it, just to understand what it's like to have a pussy, or if you're going to penetrate a woman's asshole, like to really get what that feels like. It changes the game of how you approach it.
No. There is no way this shit is going to fly and I'm going to take it lying down or bending over or on all fours. Either way, point is, I am not willing to take this shit. Also, I've been noticing this for a little bit, but I don't get why it is that for some reason the woke-tivists, the woke people, all seem to have some liking in making straight guys do gay shit. Now, granted, like taking up the ass isn't entirely a gay thing. There's people who are into pegging or at least being pegged, and dudes who actually like it. And that's a niche thing, that's a them thing. But for most straight guys, it's not like we're like, what, I'd like it if someone stuck it up my ass. Mostly because we know how much of a pain in the ass it can be, and mostly because that's just not how we're wired. Like, when a lot of people talk about, why don't you want to take it in the ass? Is it that you feel like you'll be emasculated or you'll finally know what it's like being a woman? Like, to be very honest, the moment someone starts bringing up the whole, you'll know what it's like to be a woman, or you'll finally know what a woman feels like when you guys fuck them, like, for the most part, I'm like, nah. Like, I will not be able to resonate with the experience that a woman will have getting anal or in the vagina, and I will also not have the same experience as a gay guy getting it in the anus. Just mostly because we're all wired differently. Now, for me as a straight guy who does not like taking it in the butthole, not that I've tried, but just not open to the idea, my experience is going to be different from the woman who is either okay or not okay taking it up the butthole. And that experience is also going to be different from the gay guy that will probably be very comfortable taking it up the butthole. So, how the hell is it supposed to make me reconsider my feelings of how it is that I decide to take my sexual adventures and how I treat women in the bedroom? Because at the end of the day, for me, it's just a pain in the ass. Like, how the hell am I supposed to be like, now this is going to make me a much better love maker because I'll do blah blah. Like, this is like me who really likes yogurt, because it tastes good, great protein, and it's a nice metaphor to refer to thick women by, telling a vegan that they should also try yogurt because, it'll allow them to understand what it is that we feel when we take yogurt so that they can be, better vegans or care a little bit more about cows or some shit or milk. Like, that shit does not make sense because their experience is going to be different from mine. Their likings, their interests are going to be different from mine. So to say that they're going to have a shared experience with me is absolutely pointless, it is absolutely wrong, and it has zero basis in actual reality. Because at the end of the day, if you're not interested in it, if you do not take a liking to it, if you're not open to doing it, then how the hell is it going to be an experience that you like even in the first place? Then also, I don't get where this whole desire for straight men to be trying out a bunch of gay shit here and there sort of came from. I feel like woke people started with the LGBT and making them feel free and shit, and then they decided to go for the women who were supporting them and then tell them that, being born with a vagina isn't, a prerequisite for being a woman. You just have to believe and feel like you're a woman, whatever the fuck that is. But now it's like they've decided to turn on guys and they're like, you know what, we're gonna go for the one thing that you guys really, really feel manly by, and that's usually the sex. And for some reason, it's like there's a lot of woke people that are just trying to find new and interesting ways to make emasculating things seem masculine so that straight men can try them. Because I remember there was a time when I was busy discussing the whole talk that people were having about how men actually love their friends, but they only use women for sex. And it's homoerotic love, but men will never agree to this because, that would actually admit that they're not as straight as they think they are. And the entire time I'm like, y'all don't understand the kind of bond that men have. Y'all don't understand the kind of bond that comes with being a guy. Yes, you won't always love each other, but there's a certain sort of support and respect that we'll have for each other because we're men. And now it's like they're going towards the sex bit. So now they're telling us that we need to try anal? Like, come on, bruh. Like, you guys have done pretty okay with your shit. Just because you like your shit so much doesn't mean that we'll like it as well. Hell, we might not even like it in the first place. Are there some dudes that'll be into it? Probably. Are there some dudes that are, very on the down low about them, not just being as straight as they think they are? Yes. But does it mean that every straight man wants to take it up the ass or should take it up the ass for the sake of learning what the other side feels like? No. Sometimes simply explaining it to us and telling us, your frustrations about straight men if it comes to sex, that is probably a lot better than telling a dude, you know what, just go take it up the ass, then you can know how to treat a woman better in the bedroom. But all in all, I'm not a fan of whatever the hell it is that a bunch of people are doing online nowadays by trying to emasculate dudes. But either way, if that's your thing, you go for it. Don't expect straight guys to be all in for it. And I'm going to leave it at that and move it on because we do have a main topic that I should have gotten to in the first place. And this one happened to stumble upon my feed when I was on Reddit. And it was actually talking about Gen Zs. Now, people talk about Gen Zs here and there. Most times people talk about them in terms of business and in the workplace, and in terms of woke behaviors and political leanings, but not as much in relationships. Up until this post. Now, the post itself was titled Gen Z Vicious Dating Scene in Kenya, and I'm gonna read it for you because there's some interesting things that were said here and some interesting things that we need to discuss. So the post says, and I quote, "You're dating somebody's ex, somebody is dating your ex. So in this vicious cycle, we are all X-Men. People don't even be dating nowadays. They just talk, catch feelings, have a good thing going for a while, then ghost each other. We all out here chasing people that don't want us while also leading others on that we don't really want. It's truly insanity, and no wonder why people can't find anything genuine or actually heal themselves properly, hoping for better next year." End quote. Okay. Now, having read this, is this really how the dating scene is? Do we really date like that here in Kenya? Well, everything that's been said here is particularly true. I don't think it's specifically a Gen Z issue because there's, millennials that are doing the same thing, but it is something that is happening in today's day and age. This is the current society, and yes, a good chunk of the dating market are Gen Zs. At least, the dating market with my age group slapped on it. But because I normally don't associate myself with being Gen Z because I believe that I was brought up a little bit differently. Considering that I'm on the line and for the sake of this episode, I will identify myself as Gen Z. Just mostly because I exist on the line between millennials and Gen Zs, and I'm usually thrown in one camp or the other based on whatever circumstances there. Now, what I can say is the first 1-2 lines of this entire statement didn't really hold water because I don't think the whole you're dating someone's ex and someone else is dating your ex is like a Gen Z thing. I think that one's happened for as long as dating has been a thing, or at least dating without the final intention being marriage has been a thing, which has happened for decades. Hell, 50, 60, maybe even 70 years ago, there are people who are busy having exes. Like, I know my parents have exes, or at least had exes, before they got married. So I can't really say that this is a Gen Z thing, because as long as dating's happened and people have gotten together and broken up, the whole concept of you dating someone's ex is always been there in one way or another. But the whole people aren't even dating nowadays. They just talk, catch feelings, have a good thing going for a while and then ghost each other. I think that one is very particular of right now, because there's a lot fewer people who are getting into relationships and a lot more people who are talking about how they were having a thing with someone, how they were sort of having a situationship, or they were just sort of doing this thing with another person that wasn't particularly serious. And I feel like this one is the most characteristic of the dating market right now than ever before, because for some reason, there's so many people who are living like they're dating, who are functioning like they're dating and being exclusive like they're dating, but they're not really dating. And one person will expect a certain level of exclusivity and another person will not expect that they are expected to be exclusive, so they'll probably even go and screw around. And then one person pisses off the other and all of a sudden people are busy talking about character development. That one is what I have noticed is happening the most in the dating market today, and I honestly do not know how to even describe it, because there's a bunch of chaos, and for the most part you feel like asking someone, how comes you guys aren't dating yet? And a lot of times people will say things like they're taking it slow, or they're just seeing where things will go, or they're not entirely sure, which actually makes me believe that we might be taking this whole thing of vetting a partner a little too far, where we're ending up choosing to be with a partner but not giving the sort of exclusivities that dating and a relationship will have. But before I can make that sort of distinction fairly conclusive, I need to sort of look at why men and women today aren't dating. Now, I'm going to start with the ladies first, just, because ladies first, and mostly because most of what I'm making is sort of an assumption, because there's a lot of women that sort of get swept into the whole bliss of being with this person that seems to like them, that they like, that they're doing stuff with, and I guess also supplies them with particularly good dick, that they do not ask for a relationship, and they kind of get into that role expecting it from the get-go. And for the longest time, if it doesn't happen, eventually stuff ends, they move to the next person, rinse and repeat. But also, I tend to think that there's a lot of women who won't get into a relationship with a guy that they're sort of having a thing with, just mostly because they're testing out other options, or at least they're waiting on better options, so they don't want to get into something solid immediately. Just mostly because there's a lot of women who you see them, having this thing with a guy and it seems pretty good, but it's not like they're trying to ask for any commitment. But the moment they see something better, they'll be very willing to just drop and move on to the next guy. So there are some people that are playing the options game. They're just waiting around, trying to chill with this one person as they wait for the next available option. But while I can't be sure about that one, at least for the guys, I can probably say with a lot more certainty, the reason why a lot of guys aren't dating is because the benefits can be gotten without having to be in a relationship, or at least the visible benefits can be gotten without having to be in a relationship. Because if you were to ask a single guy right now who hasn't been in a relationship the kind of benefits he expects, you will hear things like a babe who I can chill with in the house, a babe who I'd enjoy being with, especially on a sexual level. You will hear stuff like a babe that I can cuddle with, who's super sweet, who can cook and clean. Okay, probably just the cooking part. And guess what? There's women that are doing this without the relationship. So if I'm getting all of these benefits without getting into a relationship, then why exactly am I taking on a relationship? Because let's be particularly clear about one thing. Being a guy, a relationship is a responsibility. So if you don't have to take on responsibility to get the benefits, then will you really take on the responsibility? It's like, imagine you getting a car that is always going to be fueled, always going to be serviced, and whatever repairs are done are going to be done, and you don't have to pay a single dime. All right? Will you take that car and be like, you know what, let me fuel it myself today, or let me go and put it under my own name? Because at the end of the day, if you were to crash the car and write it off, and there's like damages and everything, it won't fall on me. It'll fall on whoever it is that gave me the car. So to think that the guy will be like, okay, you know what, I'm getting all of these benefits, I might as well get the babe. Like, that's not an assurance. There are some guys that will do it, but it's not an assurance that the guy will want to bag you based on the fact that you're already giving him the things that he'd want from a girlfriend, and he can get all of that without having to be in a relationship. But all in all, in as much as I can say this and talk about how, men need to be denied a little bit more and women need to do blah, 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 like, I feel like at the end of it, there's still one underlying issue, which is the one that I mentioned earlier, where there's a lot of people who are prioritizing the whole vetting process of being with a person as opposed to actually being with a person and seeing whether it'll actually work out. And this is something that I feel there's more people that are doing alongside the whole individual reason why it is they're not getting into that relationship. Because there's a statement that I've heard, I think I first had probably like 10, if not a little bit longer years ago, where someone was saying you can't buy a car without test driving it. Like that's just a typical term that you'll hear people shelving around out here in the streets, but originally it means that, go bang the person and see if it actually works out. And that's something that's been taken up by a lot of people, and well, as the results kind of show, people are out here busy banging so that they can decide whether to get into a relationship. And people are doing more than just the banging to check whether they should get into a relationship. So you have a bunch of people that are busy looking for red flags on this end. There's a bunch of people that are waiting for this sense of perfection. And as they're doing all of that, there's another group that's enjoying the benefits of all of this because they don't have to commit. And all of them are doing all of this with this whole belief that I need to make sure that she's a good enough partner or he's a good enough partner that I choose to be in a relationship with. And at the end of the day, it's like people will do that time and time and time again, and the longer they take it, the more it's going to seem like an unviable option. Like maybe people before us were getting into relationships a lot faster, but us guys are taking forever to get into them, if we're getting into them at all, which is actually making up a lot of what you'd call the Gen Z side of the dating market, where people are very unwilling to get into relationships, or at least people are very willing to wait to get into a relationship, but will also give the benefits of being in a relationship just without the exclusivity and responsibility that it would come with. So to kind of conclude all of this, I think we need to admit that the dating market is in a bit of chaos right now, and that chaos isn't really benefiting that many people. Like at the end of the day, you can talk about how it benefits guys because they can now bang this babe and bang that babe and get relationship benefits like having someone cook for you and like treat you a certain way. But at the same time, it's not like babes who are thinking of moving between one guy or another or enjoy the attention from one guy or another aren't benefiting in, their own way. So at the end of it, it looks like people are benefiting, but when you look at the long-term effects, like try and ask some of these people when they were last in an exclusive actual relationship where someone asked them to be their girlfriend or their boyfriend. For some of us, it's been years, I'll admit. The last time I was in an actual relationship was in 2019, and after that, I've had a bunch of situationships, but I haven't really turned them into anything particularly serious. And there's people who've gone on longer without it. But for a lot of us, it's not that we never really had an opportunity to get into a relationship. It's just that some of us got so comfortable in situationships and, were probably either unwilling or incapable of getting into a relationship for one reason or another, that we ended up not getting into an actual relationship. All in all, I think maybe we should start leaping and then looking as we go down. Because at the end of the day, you can talk about how you're busy looking for red flags, you need to check for compatibility and all, but for the most part, if you continue saying that you're checking for compatibility with the next 10 partners, at what point are you going to find someone who's actually right for you? Like, at the end of the day, everyone's gonna have red flags, and everything is going to be a red flag to at least one person. But it doesn't mean that should write them off completely, and it doesn't mean that they wouldn't be a good partner given the chance. So fellas, maybe you should be trying to get into those relationships. And ladies, maybe you should be asking to get into those relationships. They might actually help you quite a bit. All in all, I might be wrong about this shit, but I want your thoughts on it. So the DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.